I'm going to show you the cost to own this airplane and how you can own it for practically nothing. A couple years ago, I bought a 3-year-old SR22 Turbo. So I'm going to break down the fixed cost, variable cost, and talk about why I chose this airplane over much cheaper airplanes. I did say you can own this airplane for practically nothing, but the cost of this airplane to buy brand new is going to cost you around $1 million. You can find used versions for about $300,000 to $900,000 depending on how old they are and the flight hours and other variables. For me, I chose a newer airplane because I didn't want to wait over a year for a custom order airplane, and I didn't want to go older because I wanted the newer avionics, I wanted more safety features, some of the things the older airplanes just don't have. So if these airplanes are so expensive, how can you get this airplane practically free? Well, I did a full video on that. If you want to go check it out, on how not only was I able to get this airplane practically free, but I actually made money up front. So before I get into the cost of the Cirrus, I'm going to give you a brief overview of what a Cirrus is and why they are so popular. Cirrus was founded in 1984 by the Klapmeyer brothers. They are based in Duluth, Minnesota. And if you buy a Cirrus brand new, you get to go up to their headquarters and they do a whole unveiling presentation for you. Cirrus actually has a smaller version of this airplane. It's called the SR20, which to me is a lot slower, and you can really tell a difference when you're flying it. So if you go and you fly an SR22, it's really fast. If you buy an SR20, in comparison to Cessnas and other airplanes, it's considered fast, but once you fly a 22, you can really see the difference. It's just a lot slower on takeoff, takes a lot longer to get up, and it's just a different experience. Still a good experience, but a little bit different. If you want to go that much cheaper, but sacrifice horsepower and speed, you can look at an SR20. If you're going short distances, it actually doesn't make a huge difference. But if you're going longer distances, I would say over an hour, you're going to cut off a lot of time on your trips. So the SR22 is considered a high performance engine because of the horsepower. Turbocharged, it's got advanced avionics, and it's got things like the CAP system, the Cirrus Airframe Parachute System. This is actually why I was comfortable with starting flying, is because of the safety features, including the parachute. So the statistic is over 500 feet, anybody who has pulled the parachute has not died. So obviously a lot of issues are takeoffs and landings, but for me, there's issues in the sky, and I would rather have a parachute than not if something goes wrong. I myself have experienced in tailwinds over 200 knots, and I've actually seen people post where they've gotten around 300 knots with a super fast tailwind. But I would depend on about 170 to 185 knots of cruise. This airplane has 310 horsepower and burns 17.8 gallons per hour. The range on this airplane is 1,100 nautical miles, but remember, if you fill up with passengers and baggage, it's going to be a lot less. I've experienced this myself in my airplane, and when they say 1,100 miles, chances of you getting 1,100 miles is pretty slim. But if you think about it, the chances of you flying 4 to 5 hours at one time is probably pretty slim in itself, considering it doesn't have a bathroom. For me, over 10,000 feet, I use a simple nose cannula that just plugs into the oxygen system and is very easy to use and isn't quite as uncomfortable as you would think. So again, I love this airplane because of the safety features. It's got airbags, it's got advanced avionics, it's got high cruising speed, it's got long range, it's spacious, it's comfortable, and it just feels good. As far as the avionics is concerned, it's got a G1000, very easy to use, it's got synthetic vision, and it's got other enhanced visioning systems. Now, if you buy the older version, then you may not get that, so you may want to check into that if that's something that you're interested in. All right, so let's get into the cost of ownership for this airplane. As I mentioned, you can buy a brand new one around $1 million. If you custom build one, I think at this point, it's over $1 million. I think it's about 1.1, maybe you can get up to about $1.2 million depending on what all you choose in the airplane. Again, if you want to buy pre-owned, you can get them as little as about $300,000 for some of the older versions of the SR22 and SR22 Turbo. But if you're going to buy anything less than about 5 years old, I'd plan on spending about $900,000. All right, so let's get into the fixed costs. Insurance on this airplane is going to run about $3,000 to $5,000 per year. So I live in San Diego, so it's one of the most expensive real estate markets in the US. So I pay over $1,500 for my hangar. But from what I hear, other people around the country, they spend anywhere from, I don't know, $200 to $500. Some spend maybe closer to $1,000 and more expensive. places to live. And then a couple other fixed costs, you're gonna look at about $5,000 for an annual inspection, and that's just for the inspection itself. That's not including repairs. So I've had as little as about $1,000 to $1,500 in repairs on top of it. And I think my highest one was about an extra $5,000 to $7,000 above and beyond the actual cost of the inspection. So it's something that you have to be prepared for. And don't forget, after a certain amount of hours on the airplane, you do have some other costs. So to overhaul the engine is gonna be about $33,000, and that's every 2,000 hours. And every 10 years, you have to repack the parachute. So they have to take it out, check it, make sure it's good. And I'm not sure if they replace it or not, but any which way, they make sure it's safe. That's gonna cost you an extra $10,000 every 10 years. So if you pay $5,000 a year for insurance, $6,000 per year for a hangar, $5,000 a year for inspection, and $600 a year for subscriptions, then your total yearly fixed cost will be about $16,600. This is before you even fly the airplane. And also before your loan payment. So most of you are probably gonna get a loan, so you have to factor that in as well. That could be another several $1,000s a month. So now let's look at variable costs. As I mentioned, the burn rate for fuel is about 17.8 gallons per hour. Right now, gas is around $7 per gallon, and it's low lead fuel. So you're looking at about $124 per hour to fly this airplane, just for the fuel. On top of that, you're gonna budget another $25 per hour for maintenance and budget another $38 an hour for engine overhaul, propeller, parachute, and airbag. So your total variable costs are gonna be about $187 per hour. So now let's look at total annual cost. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to base this on 100 flight hours. So as I mentioned, total fixed costs are $16,600. Your variable costs are $18,700. So your total cost if you fly 100 hours per year is $35,300, which averages out to $353 per hour. And remember, again, this is before you make any kind of loan payment. So if you fly your airplane more, your yearly cost is gonna be more, but your hourly rate is going to decrease. So if you're wanting to own a Cirrus SR22 Turbo, this is what it's going to cost. I remember several years ago, a buddy of mine talking about how expensive it was for airplanes. He was sending me like annual bills for a private jet and different airplanes, and I was like, holy crap, that is so expensive. And just a few years later, I was able to buy an expensive airplane. Now, granted, it wasn't a multi-million-dollar jet, but it's still a $1 million airplane that I bought. And again, if you want to learn how to decrease or actually take care of all the costs or potentially even make money on an airplane like this, please make sure you check out the video on how I was able to take this airplane, buy it, write it off, rent it out, and cover the cost and actually make money most months that I own this airplane. If you really want to know what it's like to fly private, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button because I'm going to do a video on that really soon.